Hey guys, it's Dani. Alrighty, today we're going to discuss about some things that are related to the orchid hobby. We do kind of use them and they help us, but they're not necessarily about orchids. At least one of these issues I kind of always wanted to address in a video, but I didn't really know how to formulate the issue, so I'm just going to pile up a few ideas into one video, and that's going to be the video for today. Alrighty, so we're going to discuss about light and light meters, also about hydrogen peroxide and alternative pots for orchids. Alrighty, first of all, you might notice that the lighting on my shelf is a little bit different, and this is because I switched my bulbs. They're still LED bulbs, still fit in the same socket, but they're different. First of all, the color temperature changed. My older ones were 3000 kelvins and they were a little bit yellow, especially on camera. These ones are 4000. I like them better and they're more suitable for filming, but also the intensity. These ones have more lumens. Not entirely sure how much more at this point, but about 200 lumens more, which is quite something. So stronger and more pleasant to look at light. That aside though, let's discuss light meters. In the video that I made a while back discussing light issues, I didn't mention light meters, although I discussed it a little bit in the description, but many of you commented about the use of light meters. Well, as I did respond to some of you, I don't like them. There's an issue with light meters. So, a million years ago, I made a video about the apps. If you don't know, there are apps both for Android and iOS that give you measurements of light. So in a very old video, I showed you one of these apps. I started to use it, I tried to use it, but I really didn't like it because it wasn't accurate. And this is because it only has to do with the camera on your phone. If you have the latest phone on the market, it might work quite well. But if you have an older phone with an older generation camera, things might differ. You might find variations in the reading in the same location. But I did purchase myself a light meter. And here it is. Now, light meters are usually used in photography and they serve a purpose. But when it comes to orchids, I feel they're a little bit too accurate or a little bit too confusing to work with, and I shall demonstrate. Alrighty, and here is my shelf. Let's see if it's properly illuminated. I turned it on and I have it on thousands here. So let's put this guy in the light, and what do you know? We have 10,000, 12,000 Ks. That's enough for orchids, right? Well, let's go a little lower. What happened to the light? It is gone. In this light, you cannot grow oncidiums or cattleyas for that matter. My orchids still are lower than this, aren't they? Let's go a little lower, and behold, let's reach the measurement so you have a better idea of what this means. Okay, so here we have it. At the level of my orchids, we have 300 foot candles. It's not even 1000 according to this. Now, if you know care sheets on orchids and all of that, you know that people recommend light between 2000, 3000, and so on, depending on the light requirements. Well, according to my little device, I have here a super under-illuminated shelf, case in which nothing that I have here should actually grow. The paradox is they do grow, they do bloom, they do grow, they perform pretty well. So here's the pickle. If my device shows me a meager 300 foot candles, how do these orchids grow? Well, it's simple. This thing is a little bit too accurate for what we're trying to use it for. Maybe in photography it does matter, and yes indeed, on cameras what appears bright to you might not appear as such on the camera. Therefore, we kind of need to mess around with exposure and other types of settings. Now, I'm not sure what type of sensor this thing has here, but if it is as sensitive as a camera, then it is prone to having some errors, I guess. So in the video talking about light with orchids, I tried a more practical approach, things that don't include light meters, because I can see how people can get very confused with light meters. I certainly am. I'm not very knowledgeable in photography or light meters to tell you why these big differences between a few centimeters lower and so on, but there you go, they exist. They don't necessarily reflect the quantity of light that our orchids receive. But now we just measured my artificial light. Let's try to measure the natural light that I have. Alrighty, so this is the Phalaenopsis shelf actually. This is where my Phalaenopsis grew over the summer, and now I had to move them due to the flower spikes. Let's see how much light do my Phalaenopsis actually receive here. 90 foot candles. Now, for all intents and purposes, a plant, even a low light Phalaenopsis orchid, should absolutely die in this amount of light. But they didn't die, they actually thrived and bloomed, and at least to me they do look like they received enough light. So what's the problem? Yet again, the sensitivity of this guy, which we don't necessarily need. It might be useful in photography, and it might have to do with the specifics of cameras, but not with the specifics of our orchids. So how do we actually know we are providing enough light to our orchids? Well, frankly, I think this will come a little bit with experience, but pretty much common sense. It is pretty clear to me that my orchids are receiving light. I don't need to measure it, and it just personally appears to me like they do have enough light. Like this might look like bright shade. I'm not gonna say direct sunshine, but at least bright shade it is. So my common sense says this is enough no matter what the light meter says. But speaking about light, there is another trick to measure light which sometimes can work, but it only refers to direct sunshine. Now you might know about this. The way to determine if the orchid gets too much light, or actually strong light, or medium light, or very dim light, is to make a shadow on the leaf. Let's try to make a shadow here. So if the shadow appears stark and with well-defined edges, then you're given pretty much direct sunshine. It is very strong. If the shadow is a little bit diffused, that would be intermediate light or bright shade. And if the shadow is almost invisible, that's too little light, obviously because there is no light source strong enough to form a well-defined shadow. Now, if you look at my orchids, we can see it's a pretty, I'd say in the middle of diffused and stark shadow. But this, however, doesn't really work with artificial light necessarily in all conditions. Let me just show you what I mean. So I'm going to do this on the wall because it is more visible. If I put my hand in front of the light, you can see on the wall a very kind of dim shadow. So maybe this is not enough light. But if I go with my hand close to the wall, we can see that the shadow is really well defined. Now, this doesn't mean that on the wall there is more light than right next to the bulb. It has to do with some other physics things that I will not get into, but there you go. This little trick doesn't work in all instances, particularly with artificial light. On this instance, yes, it might work, but even in this case, the closer you go to the leaf, the more stark the shadow will be, and the further away you go, the more diffused it is. So yet again, I'm not sure if anybody can tell if this is sufficient light or not based on the shadow tip. I wouldn't use it with artificial light. With natural sunlight, it's a bit of a different story. But you need to know that the hand needs to be at a certain distance to at least make some sense out of this tip. So at least when it comes to light, I would pretty much go with common sense. If you don't have much experience, in time, trust me, you will get experience. You'll have a sort of a visual memory of the quantity of light and how it looks like on particular orchids and how much they need and so on, rather than necessarily relying on tips and on light meters that might or might not be accurate or might suffer from certain difficulties in certain conditions such as artificial light. If you do find the tips or devices helpful though, then by all means use them. But if they confuse you more than anything, don't worry, I'm with you, I'm the same. And when I cannot make things work, I go with instinct, and luckily things worked out okay so far. Alrighty, next up, hydrogen peroxide. I would never guess that on the market there is such a thing as bad or expired or improperly contained hydrogen peroxide, but there is. So we have here 2 bottles by 2 different brands. One of them is spoiled, and I had to buy 3 bottles to determine that the whole lot was spoiled. So which one do you think it is? I'll tell you, it's this one. Now, how do we know it's spoiled and it doesn't work? Well, as we all know, hydrogen peroxide needs to fizz when in contact with organics. If it's spoiled, it doesn't fizz. Explanation, there's no more additional oxygen in there, there's just water. And when you pour water on stuff, it usually doesn't fizz. So let's make the test so you see what I mean. I have here a piece of organics, this is bark. Under normal hydrogen peroxide, it will fizz, but under this one, and I'm gonna put the microphone close so you can hear. Okay, so more than the sound of water actually being absorbed by the bark, there was absolutely no other sound. Except the sounds of my neighbors, who are very noisy and couldn't care less, I feel. Okay, and now let's try the other brand of hydrogen peroxide, which I do already have in a bottle, just for comparison, so you'll see how hydrogen peroxide should sound like. Now that's quite the difference, and you can actually see it bubble. And there we go. That is the difference between spoiled hydrogen peroxide and unspoiled. Now, the hydrogen peroxide that I use here is 6%, and I dilute it with osmosis water. The way to dilute it is just to add the same quantity of water, and presto, you'll have a 3% concentration, which is recommended to orchids. However, there you go, just for your general knowledge. If you ever come across with hydrogen peroxide that does not fizz, it's not hydrogen peroxide anymore, it's simply water. It's not toxic or anything, at least it shouldn't be, but it will not work on orchids, and also it will not do anything for your wounds either. It would be just like pouring water over something. Alrighty, and lastly, orchid pots. Now, as we all know, clear plastic pots for orchids can be quite inexplicably expensive, even on eBay, even on Amazon. And if any of you know the reason for the high price, let me know, because I couldn't figure it out. It's just a piece of plastic. However, we do have alternatives. And you know me, I already talked about this. I do have tiny little pots, drinking cups. You can find it at the supermarket, but all of them are usually pretty tiny. However, I'm happy to say that I have finally found containers that are almost 13 centimeters wide. I've already started to use them for the grand price of €1.55, and you get 5 of them in here. I am absolutely happy. Now, if you live in Greece or in Cyprus, this is the brand, go to the supermarket and maybe you'll find it. However, since the majority of my viewers are from USA, not to worry, I do have something for you as well. I've seen this with other orchid growers because I don't live in the USA, but you can definitely go to the markets, supermarkets, and find what you call deli containers, and they should theoretically do the job properly. But I hope you kind of know what I'm talking about. I think they're pretty much the same kind of type of idea of a container. Now, regarding orchid products, don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against paying for orchid products as long as the price is justified. Now, I do understand that orchid pots should be more expensive than the containers because you have the punched holes, you have the air cone in some instances, maybe a little bit of a lip to maintain the pot raised. In some cases, you do have a stronger plastic with them, but nah, it's the same plastic. So I do get it that it needs to be a little bit more expensive. However, one single orchid pot is around, let's say, 10 times more than one container of the sorts. So I paid $1.55 for 5 of them. However, an orchid pot on eBay can be anywhere from 70 cents, euro cents that is, to €1 or 1.5 euro, depending where you buy it from. So if you do a little bit of math, you'll pretty much discover it's not worth it. So at this point, it's not that I don't want to support manufacturers of orchid products or even sellers or shops that deal with orchid products. I just don't find justification for the orchid pot. It is a clear piece of plastic with some holes, in some cases some air cones, but not all of my pots have air cones. I can do just fine with just holes, and as long as the price is not fair, I shall keep recommending you low cheats for orchid growing. So yeah, for the USA, check out supermarkets for deli containers. For Europe, check out supermarkets maybe for this brand, maybe for other brands. I find these really, really nice. It's not a very thick plastic, but it's not flimsy either. It works great, and actually I'm gonna show you an orchid potted in one of these. And there it is. If I didn't tell you it's actually a container, you wouldn't believe it, right? It looks just like an orchid pot. Here's another one. It totally passes as an orchid pot, nobody will know, and it does the job. So there we go. Alrighty guys, so these were the ideas I wanted to talk to you about today. Pretty random, but I really wanted to address them and I didn't know how. So if you have any thoughts, any tricks, any products that we can further use with orchids that don't cost a fortune, just let us know down below in the comment section because, let's face it, money are better spent on orchids, not on orchid pots. Am I right? Alrighty, so thank you for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchids and plants videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye! Hello? Hello? Is anybody there? Hello? Do you hear me? I don't have range. There we go. Hello? Oh, hi! I read in the paper that you have 99% discount on orchids, correct?